Uh-oh, the governing Tories lost 2 constituencies in 2 by-elections, and this means that the Conservatives have lost more seats in by-elections in this legislative period than they have in decades. And the pressure on Sunak is growing. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party has suffered another defeat in those 2 parliamentary by-elections with this. And the Tories lost the MP seats of Kingswood and Wellingborough to the opposition Labour Party. In the 2019 elections, the Conservatives won each seat with a large majority. The bottom line is that the Conservatives have indeed lost more seats in by-elections now than they have at any time since the Second World War. And the pressure on Sunak from within his own ranks is now likely to increase. Great Britain will elect a new House of Commons this year, although the exact date is not yet known, and Labour is clearly in the lead in all polls. The 2 new Labour MPs will not represent their constituencies in the House of Commons for long because of this. The seats will be merged with other constituencies at the next general election. The by-election results showed people demanded change after 14 years of Tory government. That's at least what Labour leader Keir Starmer said. And Tory Deputy General Secretary James Daly spoke of a warning shot. The bankruptcy in Wellingborough in particular is historic. The Conservatives lost 37.6 percentage points compared to the previous election. That's the second highest lost for a British party since 1945. The by-elections were necessary because the lower house seats had become vacant. Wellingborough MP Peter Bone was forced to resign following allegations of bullying and sexual misconduct. His colleague Chris Skidmore gave up his parliamentary seat in protest against Sunak's environmental policy. The Conservatives are also concerned about the strong performance of the right-wing Reform UK party, the former Brexit party. They came from a standing start to their record result of 13% in Wellingborough and most likely got most of their votes from disappointed Tory voters. In Great Britain, the Tories are threatened with a serious election defeat, and the party seems nervous, its prime minister unsteady, and right-wing culture warriors are increasingly determining the direction. As I said, Great Britain is facing an election this year, and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservatives are threatened with more than a dramatic defeat. And the worse the Tories' polls numbers are, the more their MPs get lost in a dispute over direction. The party seems nervous, unsteady, and on the verge of dismantling itself. Conspiracy theories are doing the rounds, including the idea of replacing Prime Minister Sunak before the election. And these calls are likely to become even louder if, as expected, new economic data confirms that the UK is in recession in the middle of the week, and the Conservatives did lose their 2 by-election seats on Thursday, which didn't help either. And Sunak personally has extremely poor poll numbers, and his party is 20 percentage points behind Labour. Isaac Levido, whom Sunak has brought into had his election campaign, has already warned them. A divided party loses, he says. But the rebels don't seem to care much about that. The party is now a confusing hodgepodge of different interest groups and sponsors who want to impose their will. And the dispute over direction is also escalating because the Tories have lost focus on who they are actually making policy for. It was once the party of the middle class, of farmers, pensioners, and entrepreneurs who valued the stability of their politics, also their economic and fiscal reliability, and their loyalty to the law, and their aversion to political extremes. But the populism that the Conservatives indulged in to collect the votes of those dissatisfied with politics and ultimately pushed through Brexit has changed the party. The moderate internal party movement, the Conservative Centre, the so-called One Nation Tories, still includes more than 100 MPs, but many of their spokesmen were driven away from the party by former Prime Minister Boris Johnson in 2019. Now Brexit is done, as he said, at least in this case, and its main supporters have resigned, been disposed, manoeuvred into the upper house, or banished to the backbenches of the parliamentary group, and the Tories lack a new strategic goal. Prime Minister Sunak is having a hard time with this. He is still cleaning up the mess of his predecessors and has now even managed to restore the formation of a government in Northern Ireland. But the problems, the overburdened health system, the striking unions, and the high cost of living are putting a strain on the country. And it is difficult to win elections with laborious real policies. And therefore, those who feel called upon to take the party in a new direction, they are moving forward now. And they call themselves the New Conservatives, the Conservative Growth Group, the European Research Group, and the Northern Research Group. And last week another movement was added, the Popular Conservatives, or PopCon for short. These groups primarily want a culture war against the left and to move their own party further to the right. And former Prime Minister Liz Truss told the PopCon's opening event last week, "We have failed as Conservatives to put the left-wing extremist in their place." That's what she shouted to the audience. "Today they no longer call themselves socialists or communists, but environmentalists. They claim that they want to help socially weaker people, the ethnic minorities, the LGBT community." However, the left, said Truss, exploited the state, the media, and faceless and undemocratic institutions to oppress citizens in an authoritarian manner, to patronize and take away their individual freedoms. The left wants to implement an anti-capitalist policy. Truss is a supporter of the neoliberal theories of the Austrian economist Friedrich August von Hayek, who wanted to provide a counterpoint to the authoritarian system of National Socialism and Stalinism during the Second World War. But she hasn't understood Hayek. I know Hayek, and she is not doing what he said. In 2022, as Prime Minister, she tried to implement radical tax cuts, but failed after a few days because the capital markets reacted in panic. And Truss is one of the many of the reformers and advisors in the Conservative Party who are supported by neoliberal, internationally networked think tanks. Her former economics minister, Jacob Rees-Mogg, goes even one step further. He wants to change the entire political system, especially the influence of the judges, who are all part of the international elite, as he says. Rees-Mogg is angry that courts have either rejected his ideas about politics as unconstitutional or delayed them with reference to international law, such as the current idea of bringing asylum seekers to Rwanda. And when asked whether Rees-Mogg, with his wealth from the City of London and his recent knighthood, was not himself one of the elite, the Tory snapped that these were childish questions from the left-wing media. And the fact that Sunak brought former Prime Minister David Cameron, a representative of the moderate Conservative centre, into the cabinet has spurred some Conservatives on. With the help of a group of anonymous sponsors, the Conservative Britain Alliance, the MP David Frost financed a controversial poll in January. It suggested that the public would prefer another Tory Prime Minister instead of Sunak. And Simon Clarke, a former Sunak aide, called for the Prime Minister to resign, and Clarke claimed Sunak was now a liability to the party. The British media is therefore speculating that the Prime Minister will be overthrown. Names of potential successors are being passed around. A possible candidate is Kemi Badenoch, the economics minister, who publicly claimed to be loyal to Sunak, but then has a keen sense of keeping her distance at the crucial moment. She recently admitted to being a member of an internal WhatsApp group with a telling title, Evil Plotters. The computer engineer and lawyer has ancestors from Lagos but was born in London. She moved into local politics in London in 2015 and entered the House of Commons in 2017. She quickly made her career with the Tories, like many MPs from ethnic minorities who have worked their way up in Great Britain, who are high-performing, who do not parade their origins as a sign of alleged or actual discrimination, and who demand more commitment and initiative from British society. Boris Johnson promoted Badenoch, and Liz Truss made her trade secretary, and Prime Minister Sunak kept her in office and also appointed her Minister for Women and Equalities. Badenoch distinguishes herself rhetorically in the culture war against left-wing gender and equality politics, but does not avoid any controversy and sometimes appears snippy and condescending. And many Tories see her as the future of the party. It's no secret that she has ambition to become the next party leader, prime minister, or at least leader of the opposition. She has already been nominated as a candidate in the fight for party leadership in 2022. When asked recently whether she should be installed as the new prime minister in a plot, she said, "Yeah, I'm not a window. For the time being, Badenoch is allowing others to take precedence in the internal party dispute." The former Education Minister Nadine Dorries recently published a book entitled "The Plot: Subline the Political Execution of Boris Johnson." In short, she doesn't believe that the ex-Prime Minister failed because of his countless scandals, but there would be a dark machination behind it all. Dorries is also the author of more than 16 low-budget novels, and that's exactly how a reconstruction of the alleged conspiracy against Johnson reads. She describes how masterminds would move politicians around like chess pieces and bring down prime ministers, all in a web of interdependence and betrayal. The book, including the conspiracy theories, is symptomatic in that it shows how much the politicians in Westminster focus on themselves and how little thought remains for the serious problems of the outside world. So this is just one very good example for a lot of them. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.